My daughter told everyone I had dementia so she could take my house. I let her talk until I took the stand. My name is Miss Bernice Holloway. I'm 67 years old, and I've lived in Birmingham, Alabama all my life. I raised 2 children with love, faith, and grit. I believed in second chances, especially for family. But life has a way of teaching you that sometimes the people closest to you will cut the deepest. I never imagined the child I nursed through asthma attacks and heartbreaks would turn around and lie on my name. Tell the world I was losing my mind, just to steal the very roof I built for her. If this story resonates with your soul, hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments which country you're listening from. The afternoon sun spilled through the lace curtains of my Birmingham home, painting soft patterns across the living room floor. I was dusting the mantel, humming an old gospel tune, when the front door creaked open. Melinda's voice floated in before I saw her, all honeyed and bright, like she was selling something. "Mama, you home?" she called, her heels clicking against the hardwood. I turned, wiping my hands on my apron, and there she was, my daughter, all pressed slacks and a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She carried a grocery bag in one arm, the kind she'd been bringing by more often lately. "Too often. Brought you some things," she said, setting the bag on the coffee table. "Peaches, collards, that cornbread mix you like." I nodded, watching her move around my space like she was measuring it. "You didn't have to," I said, keeping my tone light. "You've been coming by so much, I'm starting to think you miss me." She laughed, but it was sharp, like glass. "Can't I check on my mama?" She straightened a picture frame on the wall, the one of her and her brother at their high school graduation. I hadn't touched that frame in years. Her fingers lingered on it, like she was staking a claim. "Checking's one thing," I said, folding my arms. "Hovering's another." Melinda's eyes flicked to mine, quick as a cat, then softened. "Mama, you've been forgetting things. I'm just worried is all." "Forgetting?" I raised an eyebrow, leaning against the arm of my sofa. "Like what?" She hesitated, like she was picking her words careful. "Like, you left the stove on last week, and you called me twice, asking the same question about my car insurance." I didn't recall no such thing about the stove, and the car insurance bit was news to me, but I didn't argue. Not yet. I just watched her, the way her hands fidgeted, the way she kept glancing at the staircase leading to the bedrooms. "You saying I'm slipping, Melinda?" No, she said quick, waving a hand. "Just, you're not as young as you used to be. I want you to be okay." I smiled, tight-lipped. "I've been okay for 67 years. Don't need you fussing over me like I'm some old hen." She laughed again, but it was forced, and I felt a prickle at the back of my neck. Growing up, Melinda was always the one needing saving. Asthma attacks in the middle of the night, boyfriends who broke her heart, bad choices I bailed her out of. I'd spent my life pouring love into her, thinking it'd come back to me one day. But now, watching her rearrange my knickknacks like she owned the place, I wasn't so sure. "Melinda," I said, keeping my voice steady, "what's got you so sweet all of a sudden?" She froze, just for a second, then turned to me with that smile again. "I just love you, Mama, that's all." I didn't buy it. Folks don't start acting sweet out of nowhere unless they're guilty or greedy. Over the next few days, Melinda's visits became a routine. She'd show up with more groceries, more smiles, more little comments about my memory. "Mama, you forgot where you parked the car yesterday," she'd say. Or, "You left your glasses in the fridge again." Lies, all of it. My car was right where I left it, and my glasses stayed on the chain around my neck. But I let her talk, let her think I didn't notice the way her eyes darted to my desk, where I kept my papers, bills, deeds, the will I'd written years ago. One evening, she came by with a peach cobbler, still warm from the oven. "Made it just for you," she said, setting it on the dining table. The smell filled the room, sweet and familiar, but it didn't distract me from the way she kept glancing at the clock. "You expecting someone?" I asked, cutting a slice of cobbler. She shook her head, too quick. "Just thought I'd stay a while, keep you company." I took a bite, chewing slow. "You've been keeping me company plenty. What's on your mind, girl?" She opened her mouth, then closed it, like she was swallowing whatever she wanted to say. Instead, she reached into her purse and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "I was reading about, planning for the future, making sure everything's in order." I set my fork down. "What kind of order we talking about?" She said, her voice soft but pressing. "Like your house, your savings. Just in case." "In case what?" I leaned forward, locking eyes with her. "In case I keel over tomorrow." "Mama, don't say that." She looked offended, but I knew better. I'd seen that look before, when she was 16 and swore she hadn't taken money from my purse, when she was 25 and promised she'd pay me back for that car loan. "I ain't going nowhere," I said, my voice firm. "And this house? It's mine. Paid for with my own sweat. You know that." I know, she said, holding up her hands. "I just want you to be safe. Taken care of." "Taken care of?" I laughed, sharp and low. "Child, I've been taking care of myself since before you were born. You think I need you to do it for me now?" She didn't answer, just looked down at her hands, twisting her rings. The air between us felt heavy, like a storm was coming. I didn't push her, not then. But I knew something was brewing, and it wasn't love. The next week, Melinda showed up with a man I'd never seen before. He was tall, with a cheap suit, and a smile that screamed, "Salesman." "Mama, this is Mr. Carter," she said, ushering him into my living room, like he was family. "He helps folks plan their estates." "Estates?" I said, crossing my arms. "What I got that needs an estate?" Mr. Carter chuckled, like I'd said something cute. "Miss Holloway, it's never too early to plan for the future. Melinda here just wants to make sure your wishes are respected." "My wishes," I said, my eyes narrowing. "My wish is to sit in my own house, without folks poking into my business." Melinda shot me a look, part pleading, part annoyed. "Mama, just hear him out. It's for your own good." Mr. Carter pulled a stack of papers from his briefcase and spread them on my coffee table. "These are standard documents," he said, his voice smooth as butter. "Power of attorney, property transfer, things to make life easier for you and your daughter." "Easier for who?" I asked, not touching the papers. I looked at Melinda, who was sitting too still, her hands clasped tight in her lap. "What's this really about, Melinda?" She sighed, like I was the one being difficult. "It's just in case something happens, Mama. You're not getting any younger, and, well, you've been forgetting things." There it was again. That lie about my memory. I felt a heat rising in my chest, but I kept my cool. "Ain't nothing happening unless you planning it," I said, my voice low. Mr. Carter cleared his throat, like he was trying to break the tension. "Miss Holloway, these documents just ensure Melinda can make decisions for you if you're unable to." "Unable," I repeated, leaning back in my chair. "You saying I can't handle my own affairs?" "No one's saying that," Melinda cut in, her voice sharp now. "We just want to be prepared." I looked at the papers, then back at her. "Prepared for what? Me losing my mind? Or you losing patience?" Her face flushed, and for a moment I saw something in her eyes, guilt, maybe, or something colder. "Mama, why you gotta make this so hard?" "'Cause this is my house," I said, my voice steady as stone. "My life. And I ain't signing nothing till I know what you're really after." Mr. Carter started to say something, but I held up a hand. "You can keep your papers, Mr. Carter. And Melinda, you can keep your stories. I ain't as forgetful as you think." They left soon after, Melinda muttering about how I was being stubborn, Mr. Carter promising to follow up. But as I locked the door behind them, I felt a chill settle over me. Melinda was my daughter, my blood, but the way she looked at my house, my things, it was like she was already counting what she could take. I went to my desk, pulled out the deed to my house, and held it tight. I'd worked 30 years at the hospital, scrubbing floors, changing bedpans, saving every penny to buy this place. It was more than brick and mortar. It was my pride, my legacy. And now, my own child was circling it like a vulture. I didn't sleep much that night. I kept thinking about Melinda's smile, her lies, the way she'd looked at me like I was already fading. But I wasn't fading, not yet. And if she thought she could take what was mine, she was about to learn just how sharp her mama could be. Have you ever been pressured into something that didn't feel right, especially by someone you trusted? Let's talk about it in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss stories like this. I stood at my front window, watching Melinda's car pull away, the taillights glowing red in the dusk. The papers Mr. Carter had left on my coffee table still sat there, untouched, like a challenge. I'd told her I wasn't signing nothing, and I meant it. But the way she'd looked at me, half frustrated, half calculating, stuck in my mind like a splinter. I knew my daughter, and this wasn't just about helping me. She was building something, piece by piece, and I was starting to see the shape of it. The next morning, I was in my garden, pulling weeds, when I heard footsteps on the gravel path. It was Deacon Harris from church, carrying a covered dish and wearing a look of pity that made my stomach turn. "Miss Bernice," he said, his voice soft, like he was talking to a child. "Brought you some soup. Thought you might need it." I straightened up, brushing dirt off my hands. "Soup's mighty kind, Deacon, but I'm fine. What's got you looking at me like I'm half dead?" He shifted, uneasy, his eyes darting to the ground. "Well, that's not what your daughter's been saying. Melinda told folks at church you've been struggling, forgetting things, acting confused." I felt a cold knot tighten in my chest. "Confused?" I said, keeping my voice steady. "I'm out here tending my roses, same as always. Don't sound confused to me." He nodded, but I could tell he didn't believe me. "Not fully. Just looking out for you, sister. We all are." I took the soup, thanked him, and watched him walk away, his shoulders hunched like he'd just visited a sickbed. That's when I knew Melinda's words were spreading, like poison seeping through the cracks of my life. By the end of the week, I heard it everywhere. Whispers at the grocery store, sidelong glances at church. "Poor Miss Holloway," they'd say, their voices dripping with sympathy. Such a shame, losing her mind like that. I wasn't losing nothing, but Melinda was making sure everyone thought I was. It wasn't until I ran into Miss Clara, my old friend from the choir, that I learned how far it had gone. She pulled me aside after Sunday service, her face creased with worry. "Bernice, you need to know something," she whispered, glancing around like someone might overhear. "Melinda's been down at the courthouse, filed some papers saying you ain't fit to handle your own affairs. Something about a petition for mental decline." I stood there, the hymnals still warm in my hands, and felt the ground shift under me. Mental decline. My own daughter, trying to strip me of everything I'd built, my home, my savings, my name. I forced a smile, thanked Clara for the heads up, and walked home with my head high. But inside, I was burning. Melinda wasn't just lying. She was making moves, legal ones, to take what was mine. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the deed to my house. I'd paid for every brick of this place, every shingle, with 30 years of sweat at the hospital. I'd raised Melinda here, bandaged her knees, prayed over her fevers, and now she was trying to erase me, like I was already gone. The next week, things got tighter. Melinda started showing up unannounced, her smile sharper each time. She'd bring food, rearrange my furniture, and drop little comments about how I needed help. Then she started controlling who came by. Old friends from church, neighbors I'd known for decades. They'd call, but Melinda would answer my phone, saying I wasn't feeling well. "Mama's resting," she'd say, her voice smooth as silk. "She's not up for visitors." One day, I caught her unplugging my landline. "What you doing, Melinda?" I asked, standing in the doorway of the living room. She jumped, like she hadn't seen me there. "Oh, Mama, this old phone's been acting up. I'm just fixing it." Fixing it by pulling the cord out the wall. I stepped closer, my eyes locked on hers. "You trying to keep me from talking to folks?" She laughed, but it was brittle. "You're being paranoid." I'm just looking out for you. Looking out for me, I repeated, slow. That why you telling everybody I'm losing my mind? Her face hardened for a split second, then softened again. Mama, nobody's saying that. I just want you to be safe. I didn't argue, not yet. But I was starting to see her game, and I knew I had to play smarter. Then came the doctor's visit. Melinda showed up one morning, all business, saying she'd made an appointment for me. Just a checkup, she said, steering me toward her car. You've been tired lately. I ain't tired, I said, pulling my arm back. And I didn't ask for no doctor. She sighed, like I was being difficult. Mama, if you keep acting up, folks are gonna think you really lost it. I froze, her words hanging in the air like a threat. But I got in the car, not because I trusted her, but because I needed to know what she was planning. At the doctor's office, she hovered, answering questions for me, telling the doctor I'd been forgetting things and acting strange. The doctor, a young man who barely looked at me, nodded and scribbled notes. We'll need to do an evaluation, he said, like I wasn't even there. I kept my mouth shut, let them think I was going along, but inside I was building a plan. If Melinda wanted to play me for a fool, I'd let her think she was winning, until I was ready to show my hand. That's where Miss Jackie came in. She lived next door, a retired nurse who'd worked with me at the hospital years ago. She'd always had a sharp eye, could spot a lie from a mile away. One evening when Melinda was gone, I slipped out to Jackie's porch. She was sitting there sipping iced tea, her gray braids pulled back tight. Jackie, I said, keeping my voice low. I need your help. She looked at me, her eyes narrowing. What's Melinda up to now? I told her everything, the visits, the papers, the courthouse, the doctor. Jackie listened, her face hardening with every word. That girl's trying to take your house, she said, plain as day. Probably your money too. I know, I said, but I need proof, and I need to play along till I get it. Jackie nodded, slow. You thinking of turning her game against her? Exactly, I said. I'm gonna act like I'm slipping, let her think she's got me. But I need you to keep an eye out, tell me what you hear, what she's saying when I ain't around. Jackie leaned back, a small smile tugging at her lips. Bernice Holloway, you always were a fighter, I'm in. From then on, I started playing the part. I'd misplace things when Melinda was around, act confused about small details. Where'd I put my keys, Melinda? I'd say, pretending to fumble. Or, did I already ask you about that doctor's appointment? She'd nod, her eyes gleaming like she'd won something. But Jackie was watching, listening, catching whispers from neighbors and church folks. Melinda was telling everyone I was declining fast, that she was forced to step in to save me. One day, Jackie slipped me a note. Heard from Clara, it read, Melinda's been meeting with a lawyer, talking about guardianship, says you're a danger to yourself. I read it, my hands steady, but my heart pounding. Guardianship. That meant Melinda could control everything. My house, my bank account, my life. I looked out my window, saw her car pulling up again, and tucked the note away. She was coming for me, but I wasn't going down without a fight. I started keeping a journal, writing down every lie she told, every move she made. I hid it in the false bottom of my sewing box, where she'd never look, and I kept playing my part, forgetful, frail, just confused enough to keep her believing she was in control. But every night, I'd sit by my window, staring at the house I'd built, and promise myself one thing. Melinda could talk all she wanted, but when I took the stand, she'd learn who was really in charge. I sat at my kitchen table, the journal in my sewing box, heavier with every entry. Melinda's visits had become a chess game. Her every word a move, my every stumble a counter move. I'd let her think I was slipping, let her smirk when I forgot where I parked my car or misplaced my glasses. But Jackie's note about the guardianship petition burned in my mind. Melinda wasn't just talking anymore. She was closing in, ready to take everything. I wasn't about to let her. The next morning, she showed up with a new edge in her voice. Mama, we gotta go to the courthouse soon, she said, setting a cup of coffee in front of me like it was a peace offering. It's for your own good. They just want to make sure you're taken care of. I sipped the coffee, slow, watching her over the rim. Courthouse. For what now? She hesitated, her eyes flickering. Just some paperwork. To make sure I can help you if, things get worse. I nodded, letting my hands tremble just enough for her to notice. Worse? Oh, Melinda, I don't know. I get so confused sometimes. Her lips curved, satisfied, and I felt a pang in my chest. Not for me, but for the girl I'd raised, who'd turned into this. I let her think she had me fooled, but I was already 3 steps ahead. At the courthouse, the air was thick with tension. The judge, a stern woman with gray streaks in her hair, looked down at me over her glasses. Miss Holloway, do you understand why you're here today? I tilted my head, furrowing my brow like I was puzzling it out. I think it's something about my, memory? I glanced at Melinda, who sat in the front row, her face smug, her arms crossed. She thought she'd won. The lawyer she'd hired, a slick man in a pinstripe suit, rattled off a list of reasons I was unfit. Forgotten bills, misplaced keys, neighbors' concerns. Every word was a lie, built on the stories Melinda had spread. I kept my eyes down, my hands folded, playing the part of the frail old woman they wanted me to be. But inside, I was counting the seconds until I could turn it all around. Jackie was my lifeline. While Melinda spun her web, Jackie had been busy, slipping through the neighborhood, listening to whispers, even recording conversations when Melinda thought no one was paying attention. One night, she'd come by with a tape recorder, her eyes gleaming. Caught her talking to that lawyer, she whispered, handing me a cassette. Says she's got a doctor's report proving you're incompetent. A report? I'd asked, my heart racing. I never saw no doctor for that. Exactly, Jackie said. She's playing dirty, Bernice, real dirty. I spent the next evening rummaging through my house, searching for anything Melinda might have planted. In the back of my desk drawer, tucked under old tax forms, I found it, a folded document labeled Medical Evaluation. It was typed, official looking, with a doctor's signature I didn't recognize. It claimed I'd been diagnosed with dementia, that I couldn't manage my own affairs. My hands shook as I read it, not from fear, but from rage. She'd forged it, my own daughter. I showed it to Jackie the next day. This is it, I said, holding up the paper. This is what she's taking to court. Jackie's eyes narrowed. You hold on to that, Bernice, and you keep playing along. When the time comes, you drop that bomb. The final hearing came faster than I expected. The courtroom was packed. Neighbors, church folks, even Deacon Harris, all watching like it was a Sunday sermon. Melinda's lawyer stood tall, painting me as a woman lost to her own mind, too frail to handle her own life. He waved that forged report like it was gospel, and Melinda sat there, nodding, her face a mask of fake concern. I stayed quiet, letting them talk, letting the lies pile up. The judge asked me a few questions, and I answered soft, hesitant, like I was struggling to keep up. I don't know, Your Honor, I'd say, or I'm not sure I remember. Melinda's smirk grew with every word, and I let it. Let her think she'd buried me. Then the judge turned to me, her voice firm but kind. Miss Holloway, do you have anything to say in your defense? I stood, slow, leaning on my cane for effect. The room went quiet, all eyes on me. I took a deep breath, then dropped the act. Your Honor, I said, my voice clear as a bell. I may be old, but I ain't gone. I got my medical records, real ones, from my doctor of 20 years, saying I'm as sharp as ever. I got a licensed nurse, Miss Jackie Thompson, who's been helping me behind the scenes, recording my daughter's lies, and I got proof. I held up the forged document, my hand steady now, that my own daughter faked a medical report to steal my house. The courtroom erupted, gasps and murmurs rippling through the crowd. Melinda's face went pale, her mouth half open like she'd been slapped. Her lawyer fumbled with his papers, stammering, but I wasn't done. "This house," I said, my voice rising, "I paid for, with 30 years of scrubbing hospital floors. I raised my children in it, loved them through every mistake, and this is how my daughter repays me. Lying to my face, to my neighbors, to you, trying to take what's mine." I set the document on the judge's bench, along with a folder of my real medical records and Jackie's recordings, neatly labeled. "You listen to those tapes, Your Honor. You'll hear Melinda planning with her lawyer, talking about how she'd sell my house once she got control. I ain't the one who's lost her way, she is." The judge's face hardened as she took the evidence. Melinda tried to speak, her voice high and desperate. "Mama, that's not true. I was just trying to help." "Help?" I turned to her, my eyes burning. "You told the world I was crazy, cut off my phone, kept my friends away. You didn't want to help me. You wanted to erase me." The room went silent again, the weight of my words settling over everyone. The judge called for a recess, saying she'd review the evidence. As they led me out, I saw Melinda, her head bowed, her hands twisting in her lap. For a moment, I felt a pang of sorrow, not for what I'd done, but for what she'd become. I stepped outside, Jackie at my side, and took a deep breath of the Birmingham air. The fight wasn't over, but I'd shown my hand, and it was strong. Melinda could talk all she wanted, but I'd taken the stand, and the truth was out. Whatever came next, I'd face it with my head high, my house still mine, and my heart still whole. What would you do if someone tried to legally erase you while you're still alive? Tell me in the comments. I want to hear your truth. The courtroom doors swung shut behind me, the echo of my words still hanging in the air. I'd laid it all bare. Melinda's lies, the forged document, Jackie's recordings. The judge's face had been stone, but her eyes told me she'd heard the truth. Melinda sat frozen, her smirk gone, her hands clutching the edge of the table like it could save her. Jackie squeezed my arm as we stepped into the hallway, her voice low. "You did it, Bernice. You showed him." "Not yet," I said, my heart still racing. "But I'm ready." The judge called us back a week later. The courtroom was quieter this time, the crowd thinner, but the tension was thick as ever. Melinda sat with her lawyer, her face tight, like she was bracing for a storm. I sat tall, my cane at my side, no longer a prop, but a reminder of the strength I'd carried all my life. The judge cleared her throat, her voice cutting through the silence. After reviewing the evidence, Miss Holloway's medical records, the recordings, and the forged document, I find no basis for declaring Miss Bernice Holloway incompetent. In fact, the evidence points to a deliberate attempt to mislead this court. She looked at Melinda, her gaze sharp. "I'm reversing the petition for guardianship and ordering an investigation into the falsified medical report. Miss Holloway, your rights and property are fully restored." A murmur rippled through the room. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding, feeling the weight of the last months lift off my shoulders. Melinda's head dropped, her hands covering her face. Her lawyer whispered something, but she didn't move. I didn't look at her too long, didn't need to. The truth had done its work. The judge wasn't done. "Miss Melinda Holloway, you will face charges for forgery and attempted fraud. This court does not take kindly to deception, especially against family." The gavel came down, sharp and final, like a door slamming shut. Folks whispered as we left the courtroom, their eyes on Melinda now, not me. For weeks, she'd painted me as the frail old woman, the one to pity. Now the pity was hers, and it wasn't kind. I walked out into the Birmingham sun, Jackie at my side, and felt something I hadn't in months, freedom. Not just from Melinda's scheme, but from the fear that I'd lose everything I'd built. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind. The police came by, asking questions about the forged report. They found the doctor's signature traced back to a friend of Melinda's, someone she'd paid to fake it. The charges piled up, and the neighborhood buzzed with the news. "Can you believe it?" they'd say at church, at the grocery store. Her own mama. I didn't join in. I'd said my piece in court, Let the world talk now. But the house, my house, felt different. I'd fought for it, bled for it. But every time I walked through the rooms, I saw Melinda's fingerprints. The picture frame she'd straightened, the desk she'd rifled through. It wasn't home anymore, it was a battleground. I sat on my porch one evening, watching the sunset, and made a decision. Not out of fear, but out of clarity. I didn't need those walls to hold my dignity. I'd carried that with me all along. I called my goddaughter, Tanya, in Atlanta. She'd always been like a second daughter to me, the one who called just to chat, who never asked for a dime. Tanya, I said, my voice steady, I'm thinking of making a change. You got room for me? She laughed, warm and bright. Aunt Bernice, you know I got a whole guest suite waiting for you. Come on up. I put the house on the market the next week. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to. I'd spent 30 years building it, but I wasn't chained to it. The sale went quick, a young couple, newly married, ready to start their own story. I signed the papers, pocketed the check, and felt lighter than I had in years. I didn't need brick and mortar to prove who I was. The day I left Birmingham, Jackie drove me to the bus station. She hugged me tight, her eyes misty. You sure about this, Bernice? I'm sure, I said, smiling. This house was my past. I'm ready for what's next. I boarded the bus to Atlanta, my suitcase packed with just what I needed, my Bible, my journal, a few photos of the kids when they were young. As the city faded behind me, I thought about Melinda. She was facing her charges now, her name dragged through the mud she'd tried to throw at me. Part of me ached for her, for the girl I'd raised, but that girl was long gone. She'd made her choices, and now she'd sit in the mess she'd made. In Atlanta, Tanya greeted me at the station, her smile wide as the sky. Her house was warm, full of laughter and the smell of her cooking. She'd set up a room for me, with a view of her garden, and a quilt she'd made herself. This is home, Aunt Bernice, she said, squeezing my hand. You stay as long as you want. I settled in, spending my days helping Tanya with her kids, tending her garden, even joining her book club. The women there loved my stories, especially the one about how I'd outsmarted my own daughter in court. They'd laugh, shake their heads, and say, Miss Bernice, you're something else. One evening, sitting on Tanya's porch with a glass of sweet tea, I looked out at the Atlanta skyline, all lit up against the dusk. I thought about what folks call revenge. They think it's about getting even, about making someone hurt like they hurt you. But that ain't it. Real revenge is living free, building a life so full they can't touch it, while they're stuck in the wreckage of their own lies. I wrote Melinda a letter that night, not to send, but to let go. You tried to take my home, I wrote, but you couldn't take me. I'm still here, still whole, still Bernice Holloway, and I'm free. I folded it up, tucked it in my journal, and closed the book. The past was done. I had a new city, a new family, a new chapter. And for the first time in a long time, I slept without dreaming of what I'd lost, because I hadn't lost a thing. Have you ever had to fight to prove your truth when no one believed you? Comment below. Your story matters. If Bernice's strength moved you, subscribe and send this video to someone who needs to hear that it's never too late to stand up for yourself.